everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope everyone's doing well. I know you can see this one little press on here. I'm going to use this nail matrix monomer, this glass dish, and this acrylic from Royalty Nail Supply, and we are going to get this party started. So I'm going to put some of this monomer in this glass dish I got from the Dollar Tree. It was actually pink, but I washed it in hot water and the pink went bye-bye. So it's now a clear dish. Love this monomer, guys. Works really good with any acrylic. I'm going to use this Kads 12 brush, and we're going to get right into this video. Now, I was making this nail for about an hour and a half, but I cut this down for time for you guys, so I sped it up just a little bit through some parts of the video, and I did cut out a few little tidbits because, yes, it did take me a good hour and a half to make this nail, but it was a whole lot of fun. So this nail today is very quirky and very interesting, and I made this for Miss Raven. Now it's Raven's birthday, and I wanted to do a nail for her, and I didn't want to just do a reel because I did film it. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and edit the video down and make a video for her. So happy birthday, Miss Raven. Now Raven is Raven Reviews here on YouTube, and she's Raven's Nail Bar on Instagram. So I will be linking all her information down in the description section for you guys so you can go and check her out. So guys, the second I heard birthday nails, yes, I was right there 100%, because I'm going to tell y'all what, Miss Raven, she is a very supportive, uplifting, and positive and caring person, and I absolutely love her energy. I mean, she has touched my heart many times. Her comments alone are just beautiful, and I was just waiting for an opportunity to show her some love, and here we are today, guys. So I hope everybody enjoys this video. Miss Raven, I hope you enjoy this video. I hope you have a beautiful birthday full of so much love and happiness, and thank you so much again for all your kindness and support. Girl, this nail is for you, and I hope you love it. Okay, y'all, so let's get into this video. This one nail it was so much fun. It was so much fun to make, and I absolutely love this acrylic I picked out. Now, I'm going to tell you flat out, I end up painting over it later to do something different after that, because I had no plan. I had in general, what I wanted to make, and I just sat down and just started to create, and, it is what it is. Sometimes that happens, no big deal. A couple seconds of your time, a little switching up, really didn't matter. But I started off with this acrylic because I thought it was really beautiful, and it absolutely is. But I really wanted a little bit more coverage, and I ended up painting it later on. But then I was like, I want to do this instead. So, needless to say, yes, it took me an hour and a half to make the nail because I did fiddle around in my creativity. But that's okay, because it was a lot of fun. As long as it's fun, that's all that matters. But also, I love this acrylic for its application. And of course, I did not have any monomer. I do not have any RNS monomer. It is in my cart on my wish list. But I got other stuff going on right now, and it's got to wait. So I brought in the Nail Matrix's monomer to substitute. I am not recommending that you mix brands together, okay, because of the way they're formulated together. But the Nail Matrix's monomer worked very beautifully for me with Royalty Nail Supply, and I absolutely love Nail Matrix's acrylics. But this color spoke to me. It had a certain kind of vibe that I was looking for, and so I grabbed it and we went with it. Now, if we want to talk about acrylic application, I'm going to jump in there real quick. I do not have a bead method. I do not have a ratio method for myself. I believe wholeheartedly that you have to work with the product as you need to work with the product, depending on what you are doing with it. When it comes down to it, if you want a really wet bead, you want a wet brush. If you want a dry bead, you want a semi semi-wet brush, you know. It just really just depends on the application. As you will see, I get my brush wet. You don't see it, but I do tap a little bit off. I bounce in my acrylic, and then if my bead is glistening, and when I say glistening, like it's wet, I'm going to drain a little bit of that off of there, because if your bead is super wet, it is just going to run down the nail. Now, sometimes you want it to run down the nail. Sometimes you don't. Like, sometimes you feel like a wet bead, sometimes you don't. Just like the song, just like the candy bar commercial. You know, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So it's really entirely up to you. So I just want to say that with my acrylic application is that I don't have a method. I feel the acrylic, if that makes any sense. I feel the acrylic. I see what it needs to do, what it doesn't. And then I just go from there. And I am not perfect, absolutely perfect in my application, but that is just how I do my acrylic application. Everybody is different and everybody has a different opinion. So I do not tell you how you should do it, but if you don't know anything about working with acrylic, it is a finesse. There is a finesse to it. If I don't want a bead to take off running, I don't want my bead to be soaking wet. I want to let my acrylic set and do its thing. If it's a cover acrylic like this, it is going to be a lot more pliable and easier to work with faster. But I am also wiping my brush off in between. Definitely am wiping that brush off, and I'm keeping that acrylic off my brush and out of my brush. That's going to make all the difference in the world, because if you have acrylic building up in your brush, you got it sticking to the end of your brush, you got it all up in the hairs of your brush, you're going to have problems with your acrylic application. It is going to stick to itself. So if it's sticking to your brush, it's going to stick to itself, sticking to your brush, if that makes any sense. So just wanted to say that for anybody who might be struggling with acrylic. So we are done with the body of the nail, and we are moving on to the little side, side little part of the video of the other pieces that I am making. Yes, I did say other pieces. So now I am coming in with some clear, okay? And I could have used that, but like I said, I was winging it, y'all. I was winging it. No, I really wasn't winging it, but I did kind of have a different concept. But anyway, I'm coming in with some clear, and don't ask me why it looks pink-ish on the video, and I think it's entirely because of the lighting and wax paper. So when I work with acrylic in this facet, okay, I use wax paper. And the reason I use wax paper is it allows me to move it and mold it without it sticking completely to the paper. Even if it dries, it will come off clean for me. For me. But I think it just depends on how you're working with it. So as you can see, I am getting it wet over and over again. That is not going to keep the acrylic wet. It's not going to keep the acrylic from setting up. It's going to make the acrylic more pliable for me, okay? So the more I add to it as I'm moving it around, it's going to make it easier for me to move the acrylic where I want it to. It's also going to make it easier for me to mold the acrylic. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. You have a time limit with any acrylic before it gets past gets to that point where it's no return, if that makes any sense. Once it gets to that moment when it's done, it's done. You ain't messing with it after that. And you'll see right here in the video, because I was right there at that point where the acrylic will start to get rubbery a little bit before it starts to get completely hard. Okay? And that too is because I'm using excess amount of monomer on it. But for what I'm doing, I need that process. Okay? Because this acrylic is still going to cure 100%. It's going to still be hard as a rock. It is not going to stay rubbery. But I need this consistency to be able to do what I'm doing. So I've got it pretty much pre-molded into the shape that I want. I'm just going in there and kind of carving in some guidelines, some accent lines I'm going to work with later, but I just want them already in the acrylic. It's a little bit easier to have the guide there so I, can see where what needs to go where. And now that I've got that pre-molded shape, I am just taking a wet brush and gently easing the brush up under the edge of it, and then I'm just going to move it from the spot to a different spot. okay? And you can see that I'm going to wet it a little bit again, and then I'm going to move on to a couple other accessories that I'm working on. Now, when I get done with these, I actually move these a couple times until the outside surface dries. Okay, so I move it once and then I move it again. And you won't see that part because I'll cut through that in the video, but I'm just going to let y'all know I move it and then I move it again because I don't want it wet and just kind of sitting there on the wax paper. I'm going to, move it over there, and then I get done, I'm going to move it over there. And then when it's completely dried and cured, I'm going to put it back on the paper towel, because once it's on the paper towel, once it's on a blue towel, if it's still sticky, if it's still tacky at all, it's going to stick to that, and you're going to be trying to pry a blue towel off of that. I would not do that on any kind of surface where you're worried about the acrylic getting on it. Wax paper works beautifully. You can get a roll of wax paper for like $1 or something, and it'll last you a long while, and you could do a lot with it when it comes to molding acrylic and stuff, just a little piece. This is just a little bitty piece, and yeah. And then when I'm done, I can throw that away, and I don't have to clean up any kind of acrylic mess off as surface, because that little wet spot that you see right there in the middle, that is going to have acrylic in that spot that is going to dry up and be all crusty, musty, and we don't want that. So definitely just nice little roll of wax paper and you're good to go. I would not get parchment paper because parchment paper is more papery than it does not have a waxy surface on it the same way as wax paper does, and you may have a struggle. So as you see, I moved everything, then I had moved it again. Now everything is completely cured and dried. I walked away for a little bit, went and got me a snack, went and did some things I needed to do, and came back, and they were nice and completely rock hard. So it was time to move forward. So I've got one of my little tools out. They're kind of like tweezers, and I love to use them for so many different things. So I'm just going to use that to hold this steady for a minute, and I'm just going over it with the drill bit just a little bit, just to kind of get that basic shape off the bottom. See how much I need to file, because I'm like, I don't know if I need to file a whole lot. Do I need to get my dust collector out? Y'all, as I started to file, I was like, yep, I need to get my dust collector out, because it wasn't a whole lot of filing, but I realized, I was getting a little more dust and stuff out in the air. Of course, I had a mask on. I always wear a mask when I file, even with a dust collector on and a filter on, a side filter. I always have a side filter running in my nail room when I'm in there working on anything, any kind of powders, liquids, nail polish, it don't matter. That filter is going. So anyway, I have a mask on top of that. But anyway, yes, it was time to get the dust collector out. And yes, so here we go. And I am filing away, getting a nice shape, fixing the shape that I could have gotten, probably a little bit better with the molding process. But it's been a little minute. It's been a little minute since I've molded some acrylic, done anything dimensional, with acrylic. So I just went ahead and just did a generalized shape, because just a couple minutes with my e-file dust collector, and now I'm running this at 14,000 RPMs. That works for me. It takes the bulk down. This is a great bit for that. For you, it may be different. It just depends. When you're working with your e-file with something small, couple things I can honestly say to you: make sure you have a good grip and you know where your hands are. Okay, know where your hands are, know where your e-file is, and know how your e-file functions. Because if you go to bumping and tapping things the wrong way, or trying to roll with the punches, you can go and get a hold of your glove. You can get a hold of things. So definitely be careful. Just a heads up, if you're not used to that, be careful if you're holding something. You can use hemostats or something else to hold whatever it is that you're needing to file, but always be mindful that that does not mean it's got a full grip on something and that it won't pop out of there. So, I was taking my time, being very, very careful, very mindful, paying 100% attention, no distractions, just paying 100% attention to what I'm doing. And I just wanted to say that to you guys, just to make sure everybody's being careful, you know, when they're using their e-file, especially for projects like this. So now that I finished that part, I went ahead and got a cuticle bit out to start working on these lines. And I'm just going over them just to, you know, clean them up a little bit, get them as even and straight as I possibly can. The lines are just there for an accent, so they don't have to be perfect, you know, and nothing has to be perfect when you're doing anything creative, you know, you just have fun and go with it. You know, people worry so much about perfection with nails. I am OCD. I will tell y'all that. I am OCD. But, you know, doing nail art kind of takes me away from that burden, um, just into creativity and having a good time. So, now, when I got done with that, I did go back over very carefully with a sanding band, and I've got this on about 5,000 RPMs. I'm just cleaning it up around the edges, you know, smoothing things out a little bit, and that's all I was doing with that sanding band. I used it on all the extra pieces, but you know, I also am going to go in there and hand file just a little bit, buff everything out really well before I get everything nice and clean. So to buff everything off, I'm actually going in with my Young Nails double-sided buffer. They are my top favorite of all the buffers that I've ever tried. I love the way they feel in your hand, the level of control, and they last a really long time. I actually clean mine when I'm done using them so I get more life out of them. I mean, there's going to come a point in time when they're done, but I like to save my money as much as I can, you know. So I've got everything filed and buffed. I'm going in with actually a little bit of swipe, and I'm just cleaning all the dust off all the pieces, getting everything out of the little ridges and all that fun stuff, so everything can set aside and dry so I can get started with the process of putting this together. So I'm just going to go over the edges real quick with this 100 file. I am going to file this again later, but I just wanted to save myself a little bit of time and make sure I caught any acrylic that had, you know, kind of made its way onto the sides of the nail, around the, you know, back or the front tip of the nail, just really quickly. And once I get done doing that, I just gently buff the surface really lightly, not a whole lot, and brush it off. That way it's nice and clean so I can move on to the next step. I'm actually going to add more acrylic to the surface, so there's no point in filing the surface down completely and buffing it out completely because I still need to apply more. It was a lot easier to do it this way than it is to make the accessory and then apply the, you know, base acrylic to the nail, because if I do that, then I could have potentially ended up with a mess. So it was a lot easier to do it this way. Then I could put my piece on there, mark it, and then go in and file in a groove and just get rid of that little bit of acrylic that I don't need. Like I said, I'm going to add more acrylic, but you'll see I only add as much as I really need to attach and then to fill in the space it needs to be filled in, because there's going to be a little bit of space. And I'm going in with my 100 file and just cleaning up the spot so it's nice and flat and even, so I have a really smooth application when I go to attach the end of the nail. So I just take a buffer over it real quick and double check and make sure everything's going to fit nicely, that I don't need to file anymore, and then I can go ahead and move on. So I'm going to put a little bit of monomer in this little bitty glass dampen dish. I don't need a whole lot. And I'm going to go in with some clear acrylic. I drained that bead off just so it wouldn't run. Well, it's still a little bit more than I need, but that's okay because I want it to, you know, tuck over to the side, because I want it to fill in that empty space. So I don't want it just to be raw plastic nail on the sides. I do want the acrylic there too. So now that it's on, I'm going to go ahead and attach the piece, press it down gently. I don't want the acrylic to go everywhere. I just want it to stay nice and attached the way it is. And then fiddle with it, you know, a couple times till I get it nice and straight. And then try to hold it in place for a few seconds to give it a moment, you know, to start to do its thing, to really start to cure. This is a speed acrylic that I'm using, so it's going to cure really fast. And I'm not going to have to fiddle with it a whole lot. But, you know, I just have to work with it really quickly to get this in a nice position to make sure that it's going to be perfectly straight. Because if it cures on there and dries and it's crooked at all, it's going to have to come off and be totally redone again. So now that that's cured on there, it's nice and dry, I can go ahead and start adding the extra acrylic that like I said, I needed to add to it. And I'm just going to let that bead kind of flow down the sides and kind of fill in those gaps. I'm going to have to fill that gap down there at the bottom, and there's a little bit of a dip right there, so I have to fill that up with some acrylic. And I'm also going to need to put a little bit of extra because I do need to file the nail to make sure it's a nice and smooth surface so I can move on to the next step. I don't have to do a whole lot of filing, but I wanted to put just a little extra acrylic on there too. So I will flip it around when I get the bottom done and add some acrylic and kind of fill in the nail. That way when I go to file, I'm not losing a whole lot of product because, I need quite a bit of product on here for it to, look right and make sense. So that's all I'm doing is just going in and adding product where I need to add it, right here on the side. So there's not this weird little gap there. And some of it, will run down into that spot on its own. But I just wanted to make sure there was plenty enough in there so you wouldn't see, that gap right there. And then I'm going back in because there is a little bit of a dip here just to fill in that space too and make sure I've got a nice, smooth, even surface all the way down. There still will be a little bit of a difference. You'll see, there's still a little bit of a difference, a transition there, but I'm going to file into it as much as possible to, make it nice and smooth all the way down the nail. But this acrylic worked really beautifully for this. Like I said, I really enjoy working with Royalty Nail Supplies acrylic. It's so much fun to work with. It's so easy to work with. And it gives you some time. It gives you some time to work with it. It doesn't cure super, super fast. I mean, it's about average, but it's not a speed acrylic. So you're not going to worry about it being cured the second you lay it down on the nail and dry like that. And then you're like, oh my gosh, But this is an absolutely beautiful color. I love this color too. I wish it would have been deep enough, but I actually am going to create this color in a gel polish by using a couple different colors to create it. So I just get a nice rich color out of it. But here I am, I'm going in, I added that bead from the top like I said I would. So I have a nice even surface as much as possible and smooth as much as possible, trying to avoid any kind of lumps or bumps or divots or streaks in the nail. And that saves me a whole lot of time on filing. Getting everything as smooth as possible is going to save me a whole lot of time on filing. So I've got that done, and it's, I set it aside and let it cure completely. Everything's nice and dry for a few minutes. On average, the amount of time you really need to wait is how long it would take if you did all 10 nails. Is what amount of time you really need to wait to make sure it's good and cured properly. Now I'm going to go in with a sanding band. This is a 180 sanding band, same one I had earlier in the video, and I had already seasoned it on a file. I like to season my sanding bands before I use them, even if it's just for a project like this. I will still season them when they're new, so it gets rid of some of that sharpness on them. If you're taking a sanding band right out of the package and using it on nails and you're getting, nipped around the edges and such, it's probably because it's just needs to be seasoned. And you can do that really quickly with a nail file of any kind. It just take that sharpness off the sanding band, the sharpness off the very tip of the sanding band, before you use it. But anyway, I'm just going to take the sanding band, go over the surface because I don't need to really remove a whole lot of product. And sanding bands are great for finish filing. And so I'm just going to go in and just smooth out the surfaces and get rid of any little bit of excess in certain spots that I want to get rid of. So I've got the sanding band running between 6 and 9,000 RPMs. I kind of moved it up and down depending on how well it was doing at that RPM if I needed to be just a little bit faster. But I generally don't run my sanding bands any higher than that. It doesn't really serve a whole lot of purpose for me to run them any higher than that. If I'm going higher than that, I've usually got a different type of bit. and I really didn't need a different type of bit for this. I didn't need to take down any real bulk. I just needed to smooth out that surface. And so I got it nice and smooth, and I'm just going over it with a little bit of swipe to get rid of all that dust from sanding it, and then double checking the surface to see, what it needs done to it. And it really didn't need anything else done to it. So I went ahead and I mixed two different gel polishes together to get this color that really matched the acrylic, and it just turned out really beautifully. Because at this point in time, I wasn't sure if I was going to move to the next step. I actually ended up taking with the nail, but after I got done and got cured, I was like, oh, you know what, I know what I want to do to it. And so I kind of wouldn't have mattered. I could have top coated the nail, and done the same thing, but that's okay. It was okay. But I made this custom polish, and I used Medusa's Flying Nimbus and Medusa's Blue Iris Taffy, actually, to make that color. So it turned out, pretty spot on for me. I absolutely love the way it turned out. So I got that cured in a lamp, and I'm taking the tacky surface off the nail. And at this point, I had the brainstorm. So I was going in with a top coat that's a no wipe. So when you're doing this right here, I'm chroming. You do want a no wipe top coat for that to get, the best results. So I used Shine It from Votino, which is one of my favorite of all top coats. And I cured that for a little bit in the lamp, and went in and started doing the chrome colors. And I picked these two colors because I thought they would really make a beautiful backdrop on this nail to do any kind of design on it. And yeah, they ended up turning out very beautifully. So I cured the top coat for 60 seconds in the lamp, and then I dotted the chromes on there to kind of make kind of a little bit of an ombre effect on the nail. And then when I got, the colors where I wanted them, I just went in with the one color, this blue, and it's almost a turquoise kind of color, and just started kind of filling it in and smearing it into each other, because I didn't want a blotchy effect. I wanted it just to be a nice smooth transition from one color to another. And these chromes are from Votino as well. So I got that done and got that brushed off. I actually stuck that in the lamp and cured that again to make sure everything was nice and locked into place. And then I went back over it with the Shine It top coat and got that cured again so I could start doing this application. So this right here is actually a gel that I mixed together with a holographic epoxy to make my own gel. So this is a 3D gel, and I am taking it across in this kind of ribbon fashion. And when I get a certain amount of it done, I am flash curing it with my little mini light so it doesn't continue to spread out and level out. Now the 3D gel is great because it does hold its shape, but over time, especially if you have a nail tilted down or something, it will still level out to some degree. So you do want to, especially if you're going to do a lot with it, you do still want to flash cure that into place. Just make sure you got your, your light far away from your gel brush so you don't get it cured into that. But it's nice to have a little mini UV light, or a little, mini 2-in-1 light, to have handy for that, so you don't have to stick it in a full-size lamp over and over and over again. You can do it both ways, but, when you got something right there handy, it saves you a whole lot of time. So I jumped forward a little bit through this portion of the video just to save a little bit of time, because you can see essentially what I'm doing. I'm just getting a little bit on the brush, just enough so I can just kind of place it down and drag it across. This 3D jelly or 3D gel is from Votino as well. It's called 3D gel, and the beautiful thing about it, it's a clear gel, and it's great for chroming. It's great for 3D effects, But you can also take a gel like this, even with just your regular hard gels, this levels very slowly, very slowly. So it's great for things like this. But you can add color and other things into them. So just be mindful when you do, though, depending on what products you're using is going to affect the texture of it and how it applies. But you know, I used this holographic epoxy in here, and it was really, really fun and cool. So that's what it looks like right now at this point in the video. So now I'm going to go in with a little bit of Blue Iris Taffy from Medusa, as well as reusing the same detail brush that I got from them as well, now that I've cleaned that 3D gel out of there. And I'm just going to accentuate these little bitty grooves right here. I'm going to put some in, but then I'm going to gently wipe off the top of the surface, so it's just kind of, you know, deepen them ridges. And then when I get all of those painted in there, I'm going to put it in the lamp and cure that into place so I can move on to the next step of what I want to do on this bottom piece of the nail. This did not take a whole lot of time to finish this out. So while that was in the lamp, I did the exact same thing with the other two accessories that I created. Just putting a little bit in these little grooves, just painting some lines in there, and then getting those in the lamp and curing them as well. It just did not take a whole lot to finish them out. They were pretty much good to go for the most part. Just, you know, just a little bit of touching up. So now I'm going in with a Sister of Pearl. This is a beautiful polish, absolutely beautiful polish from Medusa. And I wanted that pearl effect on all these little pieces, so I went ahead and put that on. Now I do scrape that off and scrape that off of the brush till I got it really ultra thin on there. And I didn't want to cover those lines really deeply, so I kept wiping at it to get that off of there before I put it in the lamp and cured it. Now on these pieces, I really wasn't so worried about that because I was putting a very light amount on to begin with, but I still did the same thing, scraping off any excess at all until it was just ultra thin, just so I got the pearl effect without it being really heavy and completely covering up the lines that were on there. So I've got that part done, and I'm going in with some top coats, and I'm just going to go around these edges. I wanted that chrome effect on the bottom piece as well, so I just took a detail brush and went in there and made sure, you know, I was just getting it right where I wanted it. That way it wouldn't stick to all the other parts that I didn't want the chrome on. So I'm just going in there with this detail brush and just being very careful as to where I get that top coat at. And then I put that in the lamp and cured that, and I'm going in and just adding it in to get that effect. And I thought that was really super cute. I thought it was really super cute to get that chrome edge right there on both sides. And this chrome worked really beautifully. It just really shined through like something else, you know. Very pretty color. And now I went ahead and did both sides, and I'm brushing that off to get all that excess off there. And then I'm going to put that back in the lamp and cure it. And then once that was done, I wanted to go ahead and top coat over that and seal all that in. You want to make sure that you seal your chrome in, because if you don't seal it in, if you don't top coat over it, when you go to wipe it off with some alcohol or swipe, it's going to just disappear on you. It's going to come right off. So I'm going in with a little bit more top coat just to seal everything in. That way, you know, when I go in, wipe it off, because I'm going to use some swipe to get all the excess chrome off of there, because I don't want it stuck to the other pieces. So now that that was done, I actually went back in with a little bit more top coat, and I wanted to make them a little bit thicker. I wanted to bring it to the front, and I also wanted to accentuate those little lines, so I went inside the lines as well. I did the same thing on these pieces. I went around the outside edge of them with top coat and cured them, and then I came back and just did a little bit of chrome around them just to kind of give them a little pop, you know, and make them just a little extra. And then did the same thing. I went back around the outside edge with top coat to seal everything in, and fully cured it out in the lamp. you know, just so, you know, I wouldn't lose any of that chrome effect. So now that I've got that done, I'm actually going to go back in with a little bit more of the Sister of Pearl. This, I actually end up taking this off completely, and I went back in with a detail brush and did it deliberately just in the spots I wanted it in, because I felt like it was covering up those lines in that chrome. So now I've got my cart out, and I'm going to put this cute little pearl right here in the center, and I thought it was so super cute. And then I'm going to go in and add in a couple little mermaid bubble beads, you know, cute little mermaid bubble beads. I didn't want to do a whole lot of bling. I was kind of debating on what I wanted to do to finish this nail out. I ended up adding just those, you know, 5 pieces. And I originally wanted to attach these other pieces in a different way, but I did make them a little too big, but that's okay. So I ended up taking them with the MiaSecret glue and holding them in place and flash curing them with this little mini light. And this is how it ended up turning out, guys. And Raven, I hope you love your little mermaid nail. Look at it swimming away. And I had a whole lot of fun making this. So a happy birthday, girl. Lots of love to you. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.